Well, since we're talking about bands and Banty Ben and stuff, I was reading, I think it's Ross from GBH. I read his book, and he had a lot of great things to say about you. And you ended up forming a band with him, doing basically GBH and English Dogs outtakes.
Yeah.
Kind of meshed them together. Tell me about that.
It was an ex-girlfriend I had at the time had the idea. She's like, English Dogs must have some songs they never recorded. And GBH must have some songs they never recorded. So I'm straight on the phone. That's a great idea. So I'm straight on the phone to, I think, Jock or Ross. I can't remember. Did anything not make Leather Bristle, Studs and Acne or City Baby Attacked by Rats? He was like, oh, yeah, we had a few songs that never made it. Like, well, yeah, we've got some as well that, we just never demoed, or we demoed but we never made it to any of our releases. What do you think? Like, you two, Jock and Ross and me and Wakey, we put this thing together, we write new lyrics, we jazz them up a little bit and, just put a record out. Because it was at a time when, I don't know when it was, 96, 97 or something like that. It was that time where punk was really in a weird place. Like GBH had kept going, they'd added a bit of metal, then they'd taken it off again, and it was like, there was big American hardcore influence, in the UK, and a few kind of pop punk things were coming through. So hardcore punk, and that was in a weird place. But there was still a hardcore punk festival every year called Holidays in the Sun, which was in a place called Morecambe in the northwest of England, just below Blackpool. It was a precursor to Rebellion Festival. So we ended up getting together, drinking copious amounts of cider and whatever, and it was really easy. It was a natural, because we all knew each other. We'd played with each other in other bands, but never played together before. Actually, that's not true. I actually played for GBH in the very, very early years when their drummer was sick. It was our first gig in Germany. We'd been getting on great with them, playing a few gigs as kids in England. And we're like, where are you going next? They're like, oh, we're off to Europe like next week. I'm like, can we come? Wow. They're like, well, we can't guarantee you any gigs, but if you show up, we'll try and get you on the bill for a couple. So we literally took that as like, yeah, they're going to put us on the tour. We piled five.
That's all it was.
Yeah, piled five of us into the guitar player John's Datsun 120Y and drove across the channel into Germany and they were like, well, where's the first gig? Munich. All right, see you there. So no address, no nothing. There's no internet, no, nothing. Yeah. So like, Munich. We got there. It's like, wow, that's a pretty big city, isn't it? And it was the day before the gig, and we're like, all right, let's do the whole thing. We'll find a punk rocker and we'll just ask them. So we fucking driving around for ages. Must have been in a completely wrong part of Munich. We didn't see any punk rockers. We ended up seeing this dog-eared poster hanging off the wall with GBH on it. We're like, so we looked at that, tore the rest of it off. GBH, Dachau. We're like, where the fuck is Dachau? So we take this poster to a gas station and we're like, where's Dachau, mate? He's like, some kilometres this way. And he kind of drew us this map, and we roll up to this dingy fucking club, I don't know how far outside of Munich. The night before, GBH was supposed to be there. They never made it. So the next day they show up, and Wilf, the drummer, was super sick. And he was like, I don't know whether it's the water or, it could be the alcohol, Wilf. So anyway, he couldn't play. So I ended up playing for them that night, and we did pretty much all of their songs, because I was such a huge GBH fan.
And you knew the songs already,
I knew the songs,
right? So
because we'd played together, and I was a fan of their records, and I was a fan of Wilf's drumming. He was one of my early influences.
And he'd be one of those guys you would watch?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, specifically Wilf. Classic example of not overplaying, just completely in the pocket, just fantastic feel, really relaxed to look at, really unfazed character. You know what I mean? Not a crazy nut job showing off or doing anything weird. Just anyway. So yeah, I had played for GBH. Weirdly.
Wow. So going back to forming the band with Ross, what was that band? I couldn't find any of it. I can't remember the name of it.
It was called the Wernt. Wernt.
And I can't find anything online about it. You recorded an
there's
album.
Stuff, yeah, we did an album right off the bat called Wrecking Temples, which was more about the title was like kind of, you know, pubs in the UK and venues were shutting. So to us, they were temples of music and you know, worship. And with all these venues and everywhere shutting down and the scene kind of dying, we felt like, you know, these temples were getting like wrecked. So, you know, we thought it was quite smart anyway.
Yeah.
So we ended up like writing a bunch of different lyrics to these, you know, these older songs. I wrote most of the lyrics again. Ross wrote some of them. I think Wakey might have wrote a couple. Yeah, he did actually. And we put this record out that was 1980, 81, transferred freshly into 1990, whatever it was, 4, 5, 6 or something, I don't know, maybe even later. So it hit the scene like, oh fuck, have you heard that Wernt record? Have you heard that Wernt record? And we just like rose through the ranks, immediately doing big-ish headlining gigs, great festival slots, and it was just rising so rapidly. We did another single almost immediately, a 4-track EP, 6-track EP, I can't remember, whatever, called the Barking Spider EP, and the Barking Spider is basically your asshole. You know, we were very crass people. So we did that to back it up, and we were like, oh, this is the thing, this is, oh, fuck, have you seen the Wernt? And we were, of course, insane live. Like, Wakey was madder than ever. Like, he would literally, like, grow a bag of onions at home until they were almost mush, and it's all, you know, the shit is seeping out of the bag, and then just swing it round his head and toss it into the crowd. But of course, the bag splatters in the crowd. Now it's just fucking rotten onion mush getting, you know, all over the fucking place. But it was an incredible sight to see. I would imagine. And we were really good, you know. We were all good musicians by then. We were all super tight, fucking new ass shit. And we rose so fast that Colin basically started arranging GBH gigs to counter the Wernt gigs, and ultimately I think gave them an ultimatum: look, lads, you know, it's us or them. You know, you can't do both of them. So the Wernt started for a while doing what the Gimmes do. To come full circle, the Gimmes get people as and when they're available. So the Wernt started doing that. We had Richie Glover from Dub War on bass instead of Ross. We had Gavin King, who now plays in Conflict and Fields of Nephilim, on guitar. We had Spike, my old mate, doing drums occasionally. Ross from GBH would drum occasionally, because was I in the Damned at the time? I might have been in the Damned, so it must have been later 90s, so it must have been after 99, I guess. So yeah, it was a rotating lineup, but ultimately it was put to bed because of everybody else's commitments and GBH's willingness to keep on being GBH, and God bless them, and thankful that they did.
Yeah, he said great things about you in the book. I mean, I don't know if you read it or not, but
I did read it, and some of it is complete fiction,
really?
which is quite hilarious. But you know, Ross is an unusual character. So,
that's what he says himself.
Yeah.
It was like he at the end of the book he says he's like, he says he's part of the spectrum, or on the spectrum, and goes, oh, I'm retarded, so now he has an excuse to...
Yeah, he's
stupid,
you know,
or something.
And people remember things differently. Look how I couldn't remember what period of time that whole band, which was a really enjoyable experience, couldn't remember which period of my life it is. It's hard when you look back at your life and think, well, what's the fucking timeline? I mean, have you ever sat down and just gone, all right, I was born in 1965. Let me put together 66, 67, 68. You ain't got a fucking hope in hell of putting together everything from every year. Nowadays, you can just Google shit and, you know, pull up your digital photographs that have digital timestamps on them. Great. One of my oldest friends, Charlie Joy, he recently digitized scanned a bunch of his old pictures. He was that guy who would go to shows carrying the carrier bag with the really nice tape recorder with the couple of fancy microphones and, you know, really nice, you know, old camera. And he put them all online for me to look at. And it brought back some amazing memories and some really terrible memories. One of them was where we played a show outside of Amsterdam with One Way System. This is early English Dogs in the very early 80s, where it was nothing bigger than kind of a porter cabin. And it was just packed with Nazi skinheads that had a beef with some of the other guys that were there, and it just went off so bad we literally had to barricade ourselves in the dressing room, and these kids came screaming, covered in blood. We let them in the dressing room, barricaded the door up, and these fucking skinheads had like knuckle dusters with knives on the end of them, and they're fucking stabbing through the door. Jeez. There was these high windows that you couldn't climb through, fortunately, but were, you know, those went through, and we were fucking beating them back with mic stands, and it was fucking horrible. There was a police station right across the street, and the police never came at all.
Wow.
And he had a photo of the trash dressing room, the blood on the walls, some of the fascist graffiti that they'd written on there. It was fucking horrific, dude. And so they're the things that you don't want to remember.
Yeah.
But then he also had some like just great like early crowd scenes from punk gigs where it was just a bunch of mates in a village hall that would, you know, share a van together and travel and go and support their local band. You know, it was amazing to see. But even then, talking to him, I'm like, well, you ain't got any dates on these. You want the photographs, haven't they? So I'm like, well, let's try and put together a timeline. Yeah. When do you think the years are? And even doing that, when you've got the photographic evidence in front of you, was that 80? Was that 81? Yeah. Was it 82? I ain't fucking no clue.
I got tons of photos. I don't have the dates on it for.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
So, Lemmy. Want to talk about Lemmy? When's the first time you met him? And what was that like?
Oh, blimey, probably propping up a bar somewhere in London.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he never used to hide. You know, he was always just an amazingly out there character who didn't give a fuck about telling people funny, hilarious, dry, bad-humoured jokes. But his jokes were very corny as well. I mean, he was very much dad joke standard. And if he read a joke in the newspaper, that was it. He would quote it to everybody that he fucking met. But, you know, I'm not going to pretend for 1 minute I knew Lemmy very well. Like, I've got some friends that knew him very, very well. But I was in the fortunate position where I've not only met him a lot of times, hung out with him quite a lot of times on a tour situation, you know, where fortunately the Damned and Motorhead had a great history together, so he would invite us on Motorhead tours. I don't know how many we did, 2, 3, something like that, but really, really great times. And then somebody was putting a project together where it might have been Lemmy that was putting it together, where he wanted to cover, like, as in sing on, a song of each band that he liked, and then each band would submit music and he would write lyrics, so it would be a total collaboration between Lemmy and whichever band. So we submitted 2 or 3 songs that me and Captain had written, and he was like, all right, well, you know, I'm going to do Neek Neek Neek, 'cause it's a fucking cool bass song, right, you know. And I'll duet with Vanian on the vocals. So, and then, I'm going to pick. We sent him 3 songs, and of course he picked the fastest one. You know, we had. When you write a song, you have this idea of how it's going to be. Because I've been a lyricist all my life. Like in most of the bands, well, all of the bands I've been in, I've constantly been submitting lyrics and writing lyrics to music, sometimes writing music to lyrics, starting with a lyric and building it with a melody and building it from that. But with this, he took this song that I had a really, you know, it's going to go like this. You know, when he sings on, it's going to go like this. When I heard what he did in the studio to it, I've got it, you know, I've got the lyric, here we go, all right, and the track rolls, you know, we recorded the track, and he's there singing, and what he sung was completely different to what I would imagine, but absolutely 100% Lemmy.
Wow.
He sung in the opposite space to where I thought he was going to fill with vocals. Which was, and when you think back on it, it was like, well, it's obvious. When he heard that, he could hear himself singing in that slot, in that verse, and then having these words in these phrasings for the chorus. So it was a really amazing experience. We did it in London, and we're like, all right, Lem, what time should we get there? They're like, oh, if you get down there at noon and set your shit up, and like, I'll roll in and we'll be ready to go, right? Oh, great, yeah. So we get down there at noon. He fucking eventually rolls in about 7 o'clock at night. Of course, he's like, oh, we're ready to go. Yeah, all right, so let's do this fucking neat. He goes in the room, like dun 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 dun, and does a bass solo in the middle of it. He's like, how was that? Well, it was fucking great, wasn't it? He's like, well, let's just do one more. And does it again, bass solo in the middle of it. How was that? That's fucking great!
Wow.
He's like, all right, well, I'm off to a nightclub. I'll see you guys in the morning. So we get back to the studio the next day, open up a newspaper. There's Lemmy and 2 glamorous page 3 models exiting a nightclub at like 5:30 in the morning. Stringfellows nightclub, which was a famous old nightclub in Soho. Wearing his white cowboy boots with these big boobed blonde-haired girls on his arm.
Wow.
And of course he doesn't roll in the studio again till 7 o'clock that night. He's like, all right, we're going to do the other one now. And then that's where he sang that one. It's called Gravy Train. And it's as yet still unreleased.
And this is all for his solo album, right?
It wasn't a solo album. It's for an album of, there was us, Dave Grohl did some songs, Reverend Horton Heat, Joan Jett.
With Lemmy, or
all of them, where he did one of their songs, and then they co-wrote a song together with the band's music and his vocals and lyrics. So it's this German band called Slusiskin. Oh, I really apologise if I don't get that right. Slusiskin.
Okay.
And he used to record and rehearse, I think, in their studio when he was in Germany. So they were really good friends. Anyway, so they did a couple of songs as well. And I guess their engineer guy mixed it all. And I've met him since then. I'm like, what the fuck happened to that album? And he's like, oh, it's just so many different publishers and record labels and agents and managers. It was just like a logistical nightmare that nobody could agree on. So it's just in limbo. He's like, it's finished, it sounds fucking amazing. He's like, your tracks are fucking amazing. I'm like, oh god, I really want to hear it. So I got to hear it but don't own a copy of it. And yeah, I've heard it and it's fucking great.
Do you think it'll ever come out?
He told me it's gonna come out.
It has to.
I mean, it would be a tragedy if it doesn't come out.
And that's not his solo album.
Well, it's not his solo album, is it? It's a Lemmy and Friends project, It's all the bands he, got on particularly well with and struck up friendships with. And I don't know whether he was influenced by any of them, but he loved them and he took the time out to do that thing. So fucking good on him.
You're a drummer. It's kind of weird for a drummer to be writing songs, but I guess Lars does it. You come up with lyrics. Do you come up with melodies and stuff like that too? And when you're coming up with lyrics, do you come up with how to sing the lyrics in the melody of the song, or is it just the words?
Yeah, I do it in a few different ways, and one of the ways that I've written songs before was 2014. So this is now English Dogs Part 4.
Okay.
Yeah. Giz got back in touch with me. We kind of, put it all under the bridge. And he's like, mate, we're getting loads of interest and, what do you think? And I was like, fuck it. We've all got our own lives and we're all adults and, well, got any riffs? Do you think we could do something? So he sent me a couple of things. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of good. It's pretty good riffs and stuff. And I said, well, the last thing we did really as this English Dogs was that Way a Legend Began album, which had no direction, no leash, no limiter, no filter. It was just us puking our teenage music onto tape with nobody reining us in. We're older and wiser. I'd like to do something that would underline the English Dogs career, that I could record as the best of the punk metal English Dogs. And if it's the last thing we ever did, I could just proudly draw a line under it and say, that's it. I've put it to bed. It's out of my system. So we'd just done a 2012 coast-to-coast American headlining tour doing the Forward Into Battle album with, so we were the headliner, Casualties, Havoc, and Toxic Holocaust were the rest of the lineup, and it was so great. It was absolutely what we always wanted as a punk metal collaboration. There was an out-and-out thrash band, a punk metal band, an out-and-out punk band, and us with fuck knows what we were, but we were doing that Forward Into Battle album.
Yeah.
And it was a chance for people to see something that they thought they would never ever get to see. And I'll never forget our first gig at it was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at the Middle East, I think it was called the Middle East. It was fucking amazing. People were just losing their shit. Just and afterwards talking to us at the merch desk and just shooting the shit like, oh my god, I thought we'd never get to fucking see this. They knew all the words. They were fucking stage diving. There was pits. It was like, oh, people actually know who we are and they remember it. So anyway, the tour was fantastic. It was really, really groundbreaking for us. It sold out all over the place, which was huge for us. It was great impetus to, when Giz came, well, do you think we should follow it up? So I was like, all right, let's do this thing that if we never do anything again, it's going to underline our career. So we focused on, all right, and I'm like, I know what I need it to be. None of the fucking 5-minute guitar solos, none of the fucking 20 different time changes. It's going to be a fucking series it's going to be like To the Ends of the Earth, but a bit more metal. It's going to be punk first and foremost, with metal, very, very heavy thrash tinges. But none of the songs are going to be epics, Of course, we ended up with a fucking 7-minute song on it.
Well, that's
the fucking last one. But for the most part, it was a series of short snippets, and I was just so inspired. I had a friend come and arm my drum kit for record with Pro Tools in this rehearsal studio I had in El Cajon on North 2nd that Norm from Guitar Center used to own. So I would go there very early mornings, so I knew there was no other bands going to be rehearsing. And I would do like a little workout in there and then get onto the drums, and I could hear it in my head. And I was basically recording drum parts with fills that I would put together in 3-minute sections. I'm like, all right, so the intro would be like this, and playing it all to click track. And it was just the drums, but I had the music in my head. Not necessarily the notes, but what I wanted it to feel like. So I ended up recording, 10 songs like this, where I would send the completely finished drum track to Giz. I'm like, I know you're going to get what I'm on about. Here's the fucking drums to the song that you haven't written yet. And the next day he would write me back like, oh mate, I was so inspired. Listen to this. And we would file share. And by that time, file sharing, of course. And so we could hear things in real time. And it was exactly what I envisaged it to be, because the rhythms, the tempos, the everything, the picking, everything was there already. So then when he would send me back the tunes, I was like, yeah, that's it. And then I would get onto the lyrics, and then I would send the fucking lyrics to A.D. Bailey. And your question about do you work out the rhythms and the cadence and the vocal. Yes, I absolutely do, and I'm a bit of a fucking dick about it. Because anything that 80 wanted to do that was outside of how I saw it being, I'm like, no, do it again. No, do it again. No, do it again. Because 80, bless him, he's great fucking voice, great attitude, but his timing is, should we say, a little suspect. You know, he wanders the jazz kind of timing thing occasionally. And because, you know, this fucking music was very, like, you know, it was like, you know, I played to clicks. I want it to feel really locked in and powerful. And, you know, and the rhythms that I was using for the vocal cadence on that, I chose a very different style of how I was writing my lyrics. A lot of people do very, you know, I don't know what it's called, where every fucking line rhymes at the end. I wanted to stay away from that. So I would have a rhyming word maybe as the third word of each line. And then the ends of the lines just finished as they finished, saying what I wanted to say. And it was a kind of unusual way of writing lyrics, but because your brain had heard in 2 lines words that rhymed with each other, it didn't sound unnatural. And it was, I enabled the stories to be told much better than doing, you know, I'm sorry, James Hetfield, but dude, at some point, you obviously went to a thesaurus and went, give me 20 words of 6 syllables that all end in ly. You know, and yeah, I mean, he's written some of the greatest fucking lyrics of all time.
For whom the bells toll.
Yeah, bell tolls.
Tolls,
but you know, I mean, obviously he's like Bruce Dickinson, and he'll get inspiration from books and movies, and we all do. But I just wanted it to be a completely different vocal style, and I thought I was really successful in that. So yeah, I've written songs in my head just with drums, and then other stuff, like when I wrote for The Damned, I would develop a vocal melody, and from the vocal melody I would fit in words, and then from that develop actually lyrics, what I wanted to say. There's a song called Look Left on Evil Spirits album by The Damned, and I just had this music, this whole epic thing going through my head, and I couldn't get it out, and I developed the lyrics and fucking ended up writing it. And weirdly, on the writing sessions for Evil Spirits, I would do it in it was at my friend John Priestley's studio, and I would go in there early before the rest of the band went in. It was just the writing sessions, right, where we were demoing stuff. And I was like, look, everybody's fighting for their own shit to be on this record, right? And it was always like that with The Damned. They would just submit their own demos, like, Captain, here's 25 songs I've written, you know, and okay, well, of course, you know, you're up against Captain Sensible, a fucking magnificent guitarist and singer and songwriter. And Vanian, you know, an incredible lyricist and voice and everything. So I basically had to sneak these demos in with John Priestley playing bass and guitar and me singing and playing drums, and finish it and do like kind of a rough mix, so that when Vanian got to the studio, they were like, well, all right, well, what else have we got? And I'm like, well, I got this one, Dave. And you should have seen Sensible's face. He's like, fucking furious. Like, how did you manage to do this? So he knew how I'd managed to do it. I was getting into the studio before he rolled up. So Vanian heard that song. He's like, oh, well, that's definitely going on the record, which made Sensible even more furious. So he, the next day, crack of dawn, Sensible's parked outside the studio. He just shows up. He's like, what are you guys doing here so early? I'm like, oh, you know, I've got to tune the kit. He's like, well, no, I'll just come in with you. So he basically sabotaged me trying to write my stuff for that record. But I managed to get Look Left, and they picked another one of mine, which I really didn't want them to pick, called Devil in Disguise, and they put it through the damp machine, and it started off as a very Stooges sounding song that I got Pat from the Schizophonics to come and play.
Yeah.
You know, great San Diego legend, guitar player, ball of fire and energy, and we had this thing sounding fucking brilliant, super rough, fast, mean sounding, super garagey. And then the Damned put it through the damp machine, and it ended up as this silky smooth piece of cheese that I just disassociated, and I couldn't. This day, I can't bear to fucking listen to it.
Oh.
And they insisted on putting it in the set, so when they did, I would play it twice as fast and try and make it sound as spunky as I wanted it to sound, but it never could. You know, they were great at damn-defying product, but for me, with that, they just watered it down so much that I just ended up not wanting to own it. I got to 20 years with the Damned, and I wanted to leave them professionally, so I'm not going to talk about the reasons that I left the band. That's a completely private matter between me and the band members. But when I left the Damned, the end of 2019, I was kind of going to get off the road. And I don't really know what my plan was, but my plan was to not be playing with the Damned anymore. So I put out my own press release that I'm sure pissed certain members of the Damned off, that I'd managed to control my own destiny and the way that I left. So of course a lot of people knew that I was leaving and I was available and blah blah. I got back and there was a lot of offers for different bands that I'm not going to talk about either, and I said no to everything because I didn't really know what I was going to do. And one of them was Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, because we shared the same agent, Stormy Shepherd from Leave Home Booking, who is an amazing person and a great agent. And she was like, well, you know, Pinch, I've got, you know, this band are looking for a drummer to move on, and I thought you would be a really great fit for them. And when my wife heard about it, she said, well, you should maybe revisit that band. They're a really fun band. Everybody knows them. And I'd never stuck my toe in. I'd never stuck my toe in that part of American punk rock before. It was always very separate. English punk rock, American punk rock. For me, it just didn't mix. So I met a few people over the years in several bands of that ilk, but never really. It always seemed like a very closed shop, that whole Fat Records, Epitaph Records thing, and you know, they were kind of snarky, which, you know, I've found out is very true, but funny in their own way, and extremely talented musicians, nearly all of them, I gotta say. So I ended up saying yes to the Gimmes, and then almost immediately COVID hit. And of course, along with Sensible hitting me up like, did you know anything about this? Because, you know,
about COVID.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Kelly, it was definitely my plan all the time to leave you guys right before a global pandemic. So anyway, so the Gimmes didn't want to let that stop them, because they were on a roll with this new project and they wanted to cement this thing and keep it going forward. So, you know, Audra, Spike's wife and manager, God bless her, put together these GGTV. We're going to do this thing where we're going to fake old TV programs and record it in a closed down, you know, environment and just broadcast it, and people can stream it, and at least there's something happening to keep us in the public eye and try and get people some income, you know, which was great. So I kind of learnt my trade with them a little bit, playing with the Gimmes on these streaming things. And at the time, Scott Shiflett was in the band, and Joey Cape was in the band, and it was CJ and Spike and me. So it was very different, and I really enjoyed it. They, like I said, super snarky, and you have to be you have to be a smart ass, you know, and stand your ground and fight your corner, and you know, it kind of keeps you alive. It was a really good thing to do, and since then, I mean,
we've having fun with them.
Yeah, we've had some amazing experiences together. We've had, you know, we came out of COVID, one of the first bands to tour with Flogging Molly and Violent Femmes, doing like 7 weeks around like outdoor venues, which were much bigger than that lineup that that cast would usually do because of the social distancing and all that bollocks. Don't get me started about COVID and masking and vaccines and all that shit. But anyway, it was a really, really wildly successful tour, a mix of 3 completely different bands that you would never put together, but was a fantastic night out, especially as people had been locked down, and I use that in inverted commas, for so long, and were dying for a really good show to see, and boy was that a good show. So that was really the start of just a great run of fun touring with a bunch of people coming and going who are all tour dogs, professionals, no real drama. Excuse me, pubic hair in the back of my throat.
You want some more rum?
But on the whole, it's just a really positive experience, and you couldn't wish for a better gig. And I'm not religious, but I wake up every day thankful for the situation that I'm in, still able to play the drums, still fit and healthy, enjoy my cigars and whiskey, and there you go. There's the story of an aging punk rocker who's still fortunate enough to do it.
Yeah. So I remember asking you once at a party. I asked, "What do you have to do when you pee? When you have to pee on stage? I mean, while you're playing, you have to pee. You can't. You're the drummer. You can't just." And you said once you just pissed your pants while drumming.
I did,
but that was planned.
Yeah, it was. Do
you want to tell that story?
Well, when you've done thousands of gigs in your life, you might get to the point where you're like, well, I've done this venue like 10 times, and what's going to make it different this time? So I'm like, oftentimes nerves or just bad timing of intake of liquids, whatever. Sometimes the second you go on stage, oh my God, I need a piss. I really need a piss. And with the Damned, we would play between 90 minutes and 3 hours, depending on what kind of show it was. And I'm like, oh, all right, well, I mean, there's a part in the middle of LOEs where I can just run off and have a quick piss if there's a bucket on the side of the stage, which I have done. I've actually gone for a shit in the middle of LOEs before. Didn't make it back in time, and the drum tech took over and finished the song. That was another story. But I'm dying for a piss, and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do it. And I went over to the side of the stage to Chris Monk, our old long-suffering tour manager. I said, Chris, check it out. During this next song, I'm going to have a piss on stage. He's like, what do you mean, man? You can't piss on stage? I'm like, no, I'm going to be playing the drums, but I'm going to piss. He's like, what? So I go back to the drum stool, and we're playing, I don't know, Melody Lee or fucking something, some fast song. And I'm just like, I'm going to let it go. And then I just let it go. And I'm on this drum stool, and it's just raining down from all around this drum stool onto the floor. And I look over, howling. And he's looking back at me like belly laughing. And of course, after the show, I've got a drum tech. He's like, well, I'm not touching that. I'm like, I don't blame you, mate. So we literally threw away the drum stool after that show and bought a new one for the next gig. But it was so liberating. I mean, there's some older musicians out there that obviously feel my pain, and I don't know whether they wear Depends or whether they just, some of these tents that they have built on the side of the stage is like, Shane McGowan from the Pogues used to have a blackout tent built on the side that I've worked with the Pogues before. They were like, you need to put in there like 8 fucking towels and 2 dustbins, both of them lined, and a table here and fucking a couple of chairs, and like you would get back in there afterwards, it was the bins would be full of puke, the towels would be covered in blood, and whatever they're doing back there, slaughtering cows, I don't fucking know, but at least it's right at the side of the stage. With us, we're like, I've got to either run a couple of flights of stairs and a security code for a dressing room to try and fucking piss. And, so going on stage was very, very liberating. Would I do it again? I'd try and avoid it.
Yeah.
Because I had to buy a brand new drum stall the next day, and they're about 150 quid, you know. So,
Oh my.
but it was a magnificent experience. And that's what you live for, right? Experience.
I guess so. You told me a story once. You played drums for War for Lowrider. Is that something you want to talk about? Or?
I played half of Lowrider when the drummer who
he had to go pee.
No. Well, I don't know actually. But yeah, because my other world is I work a production gig for a company in the States that puts entertainment, like generally legacy entertainment, which means, you know, famous older bands, into casinos around the United States. So I fly all over the States constantly. When I'm not on tour, when I am on tour, I'm advancing shows that I'm going to work and actually physically attend and be a promoter rep or stage manager or whatever when I get back. So yeah, I've worked with a lot of very famous bands many times, and you know, become quite friendly with quite a few of them. And especially, you know, drummers, we talk nerdy drum shit because we're drummers. So, you know, I'm talking to this drummer and he's like, oh, so, you know, I'd got to know him over several shows that we'd worked together. And he does the Spinal Tap thing, you know, where Nigel Tufnell turns up and David St. Hubbins is on stage and he's all like, hey, come on stage at the end of Spinal Tap. Right, and like this drummer's like kind of beckoning me over, you know, and I'm like, what's up? And he just fucking stops playing and hands me the sticks. He's like, you know this song, don't you? I'm like, yeah. Wow. He's like, just keep it straight. The percussionist will do all the weird shit. So I'm like, all right, here we go.
Wow.
And I'm now playing Lowrider with War, you know, which was quite cool because it just goes into an endless jam, and then I call him over. I'm like, I don't know how this ends. Here's your sticks back, mate. So yeah,
in the middle of the song.
Yeah, that was a bit of a bucket list moment.
Yeah, cool.
I've had some amazing bucket list moments in my career. I've been so lucky that I've fallen into situations that have been just, you know, as far as musicians go, some of the pinnacles of the things that you can do. I've been in a band that sold out the Royal Albert Hall in London with no advertising, strictly word of mouth. I've played at Madison Square Garden. You know, I've recorded at Abbey Road. I've recorded at the BBC studios in Shepherd's Bush. I've done so many things that I've been really thankful for. But, you know, I'm not one of these guys who pats themselves on the back, and I'm not very good at taking compliments. So I've kind of had to come to terms in my own head with what I've done. I'm proud of it, but do I brag about it? No, I don't, and I can't stand people that do. You know, and I think that kind of traces back to my, you know, my whole where you're a boxer and then you're a scuzzy punk drummer. You know, don't you ever stick your head above that parapet, boy, because that'll get smacked down. And that's the big difference I've learned about America and the UK is, in America, you celebrate success and you laud a winner. In the UK, if you dare to celebrate success, they will find something to make you unsuccessful and slap you back down to the level that they believe you should be at. And that's really sad.
I heard that's what the papers were like there. Yeah, they build you up and then they tear you down.
Yeah, I mean, of course they do it over here with Hollywood stars, but they do it over there with everything.
Wow.
So in the UK, if you come second, you're a winner, which is a really weird ass backwards way of thinking of how you should live your life. You know, you should strive to do what you enjoy, but if you can be a bit successful doing it, great. Whether it's selling ice cream or playing punk rock drums, it don't matter.